It shows you all the usages, pretty nice and neat. The cool thing, however, is we can just copy what's already here. So this is in your course resources. All I want you to do is right click, copy this, and then we're going to paste this into a script as the video resumes. But this is in your course resources. Check it out. Great little tool. Otherwise, let's go ahead and continue the video. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just gedit the last Python script we worked on. For me, that was 2.py. It could be whatever you named your script. And if you recall, we had just overwritten the EIP with 4b. So we're just going to add on to that. So I'm just going to hit enter twice here and then hit paste. And remember we talked about the null byte, this x00 being bad. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that anyways. So we don't even have to run it through our program. So when we're talking about bad characters, what we do here is we run every single character in hex through it, right? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0A, 0B, 0C, etc., all the way to XFF down here. So some programs have characters, just let's make something up, for example, say X70. It may be some command that runs in the program that tells it to do something, right? So we don't want to use X70 in our generating of shellcode because then the shellcode's going to break if it uses this X70. So what we do is we parse all of these through the program and we see what looks funny. Basically, it's an eye test. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and save this. Actually, we need to add one more thing. I apologize. We're going to add the bad chars here after the EIP, and then we're going to save this. And then again, if you're creating a new file, make sure you change your mode. Of course, make sure that you have your immunity running and you have Vuln server attached. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fire this off. It should break the program, no big deal. Okay, it comes through. We see again, we've got a bunch of 42s here. But what we're really interested in is the hex dump. So we can look at that dump this way. We could say, at the ESP, right click and say follow in dump. Okay, if you look here, let me try to make this bigger. If you want to make it bigger, you can actually go into the text or the appearance, I apologize, and you could say the font to OEM, I believe, is the biggest. Okay, and I will try to pull this up a little bit so it looks bigger here. So what we're going to do then is we're going to look at this hex dump here. And if this is small, I apologize. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, I sent X01, so we're expecting a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then we expect 0A, 0B, 0C, 0D, 0E, 0F, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, etc. We go through this whole list, right? Remember, the last thing we sent was FF. So we're looking for FF down here. We go through every single thing and we see if there's anything out of place. Now, heads up, there's nothing out of place here. Vuln server was made to be very easy, very straightforward. So there are no bad characters. But if there were a bad character, it would be out of place. It would not make sense. Like, for example, if you're reading through and you see 10, 11, and then 12 was missing, and then it goes to 13, okay, it's likely that 12 is a bad character. Now, to make more sense of this, I do have bad characters pulled up. Let's take a look at this. So, I've got this dump here instead. So if we look, we've got 01, 02, 03, B0, B0, 06, 07, 08. Okay, so right away, we're missing 4 and 5, right? So we can identify those as bad characters. And what about the rest? So if we keep going through here and we keep looking for these B0s, which is how it's identifying, then we know that those are bad characters. Now, I will say that it's not going to always be B0 that shows up. It's just going to be something that's out of place. And this is definitely an eye test that you're going to have to run through when you do buffer overflows, and you're going to have to make sure you find everything. I have in the past missed one bad character, generated my shellcode, and pulled my hair out for 30 minutes to an hour looking at why it was not working. So if you want to look at this in practice, go ahead. You can pause the video, see if you can identify the rest of the bad characters here. But if not, I'll identify them for you. It's these guys, right? So what you would do is you would write all of these down. You would say, okay, I'm missing 04. I'm missing 05. I'm missing 28 over here.
I'm missing 29, missing 44, 45, etc., right? So you want to make sure you notate all of these down, because when we generate shellcode in a couple of videos, you're going to have to remember all of these. But again, lucky for us, the only thing we're going to have to take out when we generate shellcode is that null byte, which we took out here, or else we'd see it start with 0, 0.
In a second small update to this video, I want to talk about the bad characters here. Now, when I first gave instruction and taught this, my understanding of bad characters was actually incorrect. And as we grow older and learn more, we learn more about some of this stuff. So I'm back with a minor correction here. First of all, the B0 character itself, right here, is okay as a character. Second of all, consecutive bad characters, all you have to worry about is the 4 here. The 5 is actually an okay character. So anytime you have consecutive characters, which we have here, our only bad character is the first character in that sequence, so 44 in this instance. With that being said, I am one that takes caution. I would rather take out 4 and 5 and even B0 and run that and have my shellcode generate. Now, I can understand wanting to understand the technical portion of it and what is right and wrong, and I agree 100%. But your shellcode will still operate if you took out 4 and 5, or if you just took out 4. In some rare exceptions, that might not be the case, but for the most part, and especially in beginner exploit development, that is true. But I did want to add some clarification here. From here, we're going to move on to the next video.
Okay, now on to finding the right module. So when we talk about finding the right module, what we're saying is we're looking for a DLL or something similar inside of a program that has no memory protections, meaning no DEP, no ASLR, no safe SEH, etc. Now there's a tool out there called Mona Modules that we can use with Immunity Debugger to achieve this. So if you go out to Google and you search Mona Modules, you should be able to find a GitHub page for it. You're going to need to download this mona.py file and put it in this specific folder here. So the specific folder is this PC, program files x86, Immunity Inc., Immunity Debugger, PyCommands, and you're going to paste it right into here. So go ahead and do that, and then once you're ready, let's go back to Immunity Debugger. And now I already have the program attached, Vuln servers here. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually type in this little bar down here. So what you can type in is exclamation Mona Modules and hit enter. So that'll pop this guy up here. And if you look, what we can see is these protection settings right here. Look, we've got false, 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 false across the board for some of these protection settings. And that's what is ideal for us, right? We've got trues on some of these other things, but really what we're looking for is we're looking for something attached to Vuln server itself, which you can see this Vuln server right here, and we're looking for all falses. So a prime candidate immediately right away is this essfunc.dll. So we're going to go ahead and just keep that in the back of our minds, because we actually need to do one other thing. Now, if we know this by memory, we can go ahead and type it out right here, but I want to show you the process for actually finding what we're about to do. What we're about to do is find the opcode equivalent of a jump. So let's go ahead and look at how to do that. To do that, we're going to go into Kali Linux, and we're going to locate something called NASM shell. So we'll just type locate NASM shell, and go ahead and just copy this Ruby right here, and then paste it in like this and hit enter. So when we say we're looking for the opcode equivalent, we're trying to convert assembly language into hex code. So what I'm doing is I'm going to type in this assembly language, this JMP ESP. This is a jump command. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this as a pointer. So the pointer is going to jump to our malicious shellcode, and that'll make more sense here in just a little bit. So the hex code equivalent of JMP ESP is FFE4. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this information, this FFE4, and we're going to go back into Immunity, and we're going to type this instead. So let's delete the modules part. We're going to keep Mona, and And we're going to say Mona find. We'll do a -s. And we're going to say xff/xe4. And then we're going to say M for module. And we're going to use this ESSfunc.dll. So if that makes sense, we've got our opcode equivalent here, the FFE4. And then we've got the module of ESSfunc.dll, which is right here. Again, we chose this because it goes with the Vuln server program and it has no memory protections. So this is a good candidate for what we want to do. So let's go ahead and just hit enter on this guy. Okay, and I think I forgot a slash here. Let's check this out. Okay, so that is better. So what we're looking for here is we're looking for these return addresses. So if you look at this 625011AF, that is going to be a return address. So let's go ahead and just write this one down. We're going to go right down the list and find what works. So I always like to start at the top, and you can see here that it found this ESSfunc.dll, and it's got all the memory protections here listed as false. So now with this information, what we're going to do is we're going to go into Kali. We're going to just type exit here on this NASM shell. And we need to edit our Python script. So whatever Python script you're at, I'm still on 2.py, go ahead and open that guy up. Let's delete out the bad characters because we did already find those. And now what we're going to do is we're going to delete out this B4. So let's write in real quick what our return address was. Remember, it was 625011AF. So now, instead of having 4 B's in place of the EIP, we're going to put this pointer there. So we're going to have the EIP be a jump code, and then the jump code is going to go to malicious code. So we're going to enter that in here. Now we're going to enter it in a little special. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to enter it in like this. We're going to say /XAF/X11/X50/X62. If you notice, this is actually in reverse. So you see AF115062. We're doing this reverse for a special reason. So when we're talking with x86 architecture, we're doing something called little endian format. So x86 architecture actually stores the low order byte at the lowest address and the high order byte at the highest address. So we actually have to put this in reverse order. So what this should do now is this should throw the same error before, but it's going to hit a jump point. So we can do something special in Immunity to actually catch this. Let's go ahead and hit save on this script. And let's open up Immunity again. So let's go ahead and minimize this. And let's maximize this guy again. Okay, so we're going to do something special here. So first what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to click on this little arrow here. It's kind of bluish black. And we're going to enter in this expression to follow, 625011AF. So remember, that's going to be our jump code. So if we hit OK, we should find this FFE4, this JMP ESP, right? And this is perfect. This is exactly what we want right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit F2. So F2 will turn it blue. And what we have just done is we've set a breakpoint. So we have the breakpoint running. What this means is we're going to overflow the buffer, but if we hit this specific spot, this jump code, it's not going to jump to further instruction. It's actually going to break the program and pause right here for further instruction from us. And that's all we want. We don't have anywhere to jump to right now, so it's not important. We just need to know that we are hitting this, we're overwriting the EIP in the exact spot we need to, and then we're going to be able to jump forward. So let's go ahead and hit play here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back into Kali and we're going to execute our script. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say 2.py here. Run that. Oh, you know what I did? Apologize here. I never deleted the original code here. So if you caught that, good job. Okay, let's go ahead and try that now. Okay, so we ran it, and what happened? You see breakpoint at ESSfunc.625011AF happened. The program is now paused. we have hit our breakpoint. That means we control this EIP. Look at this, 625011AF. We control the EIP. Now all we have to do is generate some shellcode, point directly to that shellcode, and we are home free with root. So we're going to go ahead and do that in the next video, and I will catch you over there. All right, the video you have been waiting for. This is the last and final video in the course, and now we're going to gain shell. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to use a tool called MSF Venom, and we're going to use that to generate shellcode. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the command over, and then we'll talk about what this command does. So we're running MSF Venom. It's brought to you by Metasploit, and we're going to set a switch of P for payload. So we're going to set the payload for Windows because we're attacking a Windows machine, and we're going to do a shell reverse TCP. So we didn't declare x64 here, so we're going to assume x86, but we'll declare that later just in case. So when we have a reverse shell like this, what we're doing is we're having the victim connect back to us. So we need to provide our information. So by our information, I mean the Kali machine IP address, which is going to be our L host right here. And then we're going to also have a port we're going to be listening on. So that's going to be our L port, our listening port. And we're going to declare that as 4444. I'm setting an exit func equal to thread. All that does is make our exploit a little bit more stable. We have a -F for file type. We're going to export this into C. A -A for architecture, that's x86. And then a -B for bad characters. Here's where finding the bad characters becomes important. So we didn't have any besides the null byte, but it's always good to teach it and explain why it would be important later. So if we had any bad characters, this is where we would put them in. So let's go ahead and just hit enter here. And it'll take just a second to generate this shellcode. And once it does, we're going to copy and paste it into our Python script that we've been using. So we're going to grab this information here. We don't need the semicolon. And it's always good to take note of the payload size. So it's not going to matter too much for us, but if you do go into exploit development, payload size can be everything. It could be that you're working with a very limited space. Say you only have 200 bytes left, and a payload size of 351 is just not going to work because you're going to truncate it at 200. So always good to note the payload size, especially as you dive deeper into other projects, if you do go farther into exploit development. So let's go ahead now and open up our Python script we've been using. So I'm still on 2.py. And I'm going to declare a new variable here up at the top. We're just going to call this overflow. Set it equal to this. I'm going to add a parenthesis, hit enter, and then add a closing parenthesis like that. So what we're also going to do is we're going to come down here, and we're going to add in overflow, and then we're going to talk about this. So what we've got here is we've got the shellcode, right? So what's going to happen is we're going to submit the shellcode. In this variable shellcode here, we're going to say, okay, 2003 bytes, that gets us to the EIP. When we get to the EIP, we're going to hit this pointer address, right? This pointer address is just a jump address. So we're going to jump to this set of instructions that we provide. The set of instructions we're providing is this overflow here. So what we need to do before we submit this overflow is actually insert something else. And those are called NOPs. So it's going to look something like this. So it's called X90 like this, and we're just going to add 32 in. And so NOPs are padding, essentially. They stand for no operation. If you've ever heard of something called a NOP sled, that's kind of what it's referring to. So when we have something like this, what we're doing is we're just adding a little bit of pad space in between this jump command and this overflow shellcode, right? So in an instance, if we didn't have this, it's possible that our overflow wouldn't actually work. We wouldn't get command execution on the computer because something interfered here. So we just like to add a little bit of padding in between these two, and that makes it a little bit more safe. Again, if you have a limited space, say we go back to the 200 byte example, you might really need a little bit of padding, like 8 bytes, 16 bytes. You have to play around with it and figure it out. So a lot of exploit development is just messing around with the exploit until something works. So we're going to go ahead and just save this now. Okay, and then on another tab over here, what we're going to do is I'm going to set up netcat to listen. So it's going to be NVLP like this. And then I'm going to put the port to all fours because that's what we declared in our shellcode generation. Okay, lastly, what we need to do is we need to run Vuln server as administrator. We don't have to have it in immunity this time. All we have to do is just make sure it's running. And then we're going to fire off this guy. So we're going to say 2.py, hit enter, check this over here, and look at that, we've got a shell. So now we are on this computer. We could say, who am I? Okay, it's Heath. Heath is me. That's the administrator. Perfect. We are good to go. So we have gone from fuzzying a program, spiking a program, not knowing anything about the program, finding the vulnerable trun command. We used that to fuzz it. We found and controlled the EIP. We found some bad characters. We found the right module, generated some shellcode, and now here we are at root. So hopefully this has been easy for you. My recommendation is to go through and make notes again, try to understand the theory behind what's happening, and also try to understand everything that's going on. This is as basic and simple as overflow can get. Of course, there are memory protections. It's not generally this easy. This is just meant to teach people how buffer overflows work.
Hello, everyone. So this is a update to the course. It is 2021 and Python 2 is now very much deprecated. So I showed you some tips and tricks and techniques to run Python 2, and it really was all manual method for utilizing Immunity Debugger. And I think the manual method's good, so you understand why you're doing what you're doing and how you can go through it. Now I'm going to show you some automated steps that we can use using Mona, and I'm going to show you how to build out our script in Python 3. Now I'm going to semi-speed run through this because you should have most of this already. So I'm going to walk through and talk what is different in Python 3 and what you see and what might look a little bit different. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're looking at our initial fuzzing script here. And you can see I'm calling out up here user bin Python 3 as opposed to our user bin Python that we initially called. And we're coming through and everything holds true for the most part, except when you come down, we have a couple of differences. So I am putting in a payload of this trun command, right? And we have the buffer that we're sending through. This should look familiar. This is what we did, except we did this in the send command here. All we're doing now is we are encoding this. Now, this might run on its own, although we've seen some issues with Python 3, especially without encoding it, where this will not run. So now we're doing byte encoding, and I'll show you what that looks like here in just a minute when we get to our last script, what it looks like kind of manually, and how you can get this to execute. But for here, we're doing byte encoding, and this is allowing this to send. It's a feature of Python 3. We have to declare what we're sending over in the data. So we're sending over these bytes. Okay, so very, very small differences here. The declaration of Python 3 at the top. Everything else holds true, except we're adding this payload command and we're using a .encode to send this over. Other than that, the print command down here, you'll notice prints now have parentheses. Python 3 feature. We don't just do print and then you're used to seeing just the quotes. Python 3 now, you have to utilize the parentheses around a print. So we're doing that. Okay, so simple, straightforward on this script. If you need it, go ahead, pause on any of these and copy it down if you want to try this out. I'm going to move on to the second part here. So when we're trying to find the offset, same exact thing. Notice all I did was delete the buffer. This looks exactly like the second script that we ran in the initial videos, right? But this time, all I'm doing is removing that while loop, bringing this over. This is identical to the script we created. And again, the print command is now in parentheses. This offset's here and it's just encoded. Nothing different. We generate this the same exact way, and then we find the offset in the same exact way using our tool set. Okay, so we generate this, go in there, see the offset. The offset will be exactly the same. We'll find that it's 2003, and we'll move on to our next script where we try to control the EIP. So again, make sure you're using Python 3 at the top. Just small minor changes here. So now with Python 3 at the top again, our third script, we're going to go ahead and take this, make it into shellcode. This should look no different again. And now we're just going to replace that with the shellcode variable. Same thing. This is even identical. These last two scripts here, purely identical. All we have to do is change offset into shellcode now that we have found that the offset's at 2003, and we're trying to overwrite the EIP with the 4 bytes. So easy breezy. Moving on, this is where we get into a little bit of fun. Okay, so I showed you how to go out and grab bad characters lists, and we did the manual method where we reviewed everything, and gosh, that took a long time. What we can do here is we have the bad characters. Let's just take a look at this script first. Now, this is how we have our bad characters. Again, all we have to do is add the bad characters in, add that to the end of our shellcode, have our shellcode here for the payload command. This is all the same, payload encode, ship it off, we're good. But I want to ship this off, but I want to show you something first. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to switch over to a Windows VM that I have. I'm going to go ahead and load up Vuln Server, and I want to show you a couple commands. So the first command, we're going to use Mona here, and we're going to set a configuration working folder. So what I've done is I've gone in here, and if I went to my C drive and I just created a folder called Mona right here. So go ahead and just create a folder if you want. And what I do now is I declare this is where I want Mona to save data. So I'm just going to say exclamation Mona config, and then we're going to tell it to set a working folder just like this, and then C Mona like this. Okay, you can hit enter on that, and it'll say that you have set the working folder. Now, once you have your working folder set, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and generate a bad characters list. Remember, we had to go out and find that bad characters list. It's not that difficult, but this is a nice little feature that we can do. So I want to show this to you. We can use a Mona command. So we can just say Mona, and we can come in here and just say byte array, BYTE ARRAY, and then we type in -CPB, and then we're going to say X00. So what we're doing here is we're generating a payload list for us, and we're saying go ahead and strip out the X00. We don't need that. You could, in theory, just delete this and just run Mona byte array, but here this is fine because it'll take out the 00 for us. We don't need it. You can see that it generated a list right here, but if you go to your Mona folder, it put it into a nice text file here. I'm actually going to delete this and let this all go one more time. So I'm going to let it start off as if we were doing this together. Okay, so this text file here, this byte array, you come in here and look, it's got the byte array generated for you. You can literally just copy and paste this into your shellcode. You don't have to go out and do anything. This will generate it for you. So if you had bad characters you wanted to strip off, say like a 01, 02, it would take that and automatically do that for you. Very nice little feature. It also creates this bin file. Okay, so it knows the characters it's going to be comparing against and looking for. So once we go and we run this, I'm going to go ahead and click the C up here. That's going to bring us back to our normal view. I'm going to go ahead and hit play up here. I'm going to let the program run, and then what I want to do on my side is, and you can run your Python 2 script if you don't have a Python 3 put together yet, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this for.py. I'm going to run the bad characters like we would before. So I'm just going to run Python 3 for.py. I'm going to send that off, and hopefully we should have an error over here. We do. We've paused. You can see we got the access violation. We overwrote with the 4.2s. That's pretty common. This right here is where we would right click and we would say follow and dump, and we go manually review everything. Oh, that's terrible. Instead of doing that, why can't we just use Mona? Well, we actually can. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So here we're going to say Mona. I'm going to delete some of this, and we're just going to type in compare, Mona compare, and we give a -F for the file location. And so we're just going to say C Mona, and then we're going to compare this bin file that it generated, byte array.bin. So it generated this byte array bin file right here. It's going to compare that, and it's going to look at the address we give it. So we want to give it the address of the ESP sitting here. So we have, in the ESP, we have 010A F9 C8. And this changes. Your ESP value might be different. That's fine. So just enter in whatever you see in your ESP. And I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to just hit enter on this. And it's going to look for any bad characters. And it says here that the bad character results are 0, 0, and 80. Now, when we manually reviewed this, we didn't see 80 as being a bad character. It says possible bad characters 80. If you see this and you want to generate your shellcode without 0, 0 and without 80, that'd be perfectly fine. You don't have to go through and utilize 80. It will generate shellcode without it, and just to be safe. Okay, but here, I don't say it's false positive. It's just detecting a possible bad character. So you would take this list here and just go ahead and generate your shellcode based on that. So again, fairly straightforward. Now, next step. Remember, we had to find the jump address. We had to find our return address. And we went and we found the XFF, XE4, and we had to do that in more of a convoluted way using Kali Linux. We don't have to do that here. We can actually utilize a Mona command as well to do all this. So I'm just going to make this clean again. And let's actually just go ahead and open up a new Immunity debugger, and we'll just go ahead and load and attach Vuln server again so that we have a clean instance. We can let this run. And remember, when we were searching for our essfunc.dll, we tried to find the right module. When we came in here and we said, hey, Mona modules, and we looked and we saw the essfunc.dll and we said, hey, that's good. And we went and found the XFF XE4. Well, we can kind of bypass a step here. Let's say that we identified a module like we did. Now all we have to do is we can just say, hey, I want to find the jump address for ESP. Okay, and then we just say, I want to find that for essfunc.dll. And we're going to do that, and we should find a return address when we run that. So it'll bring you to the screen. All you have to do is minimize this. And if you come into here, you'll see that we ran the command. And we have the same results as we did before. So we don't have to go through that whole process of finding the XFF XE4. This will do it for us. And you can see the 625011AF, that is identical to what we had before. So we found the exact same thing. Okay, I'm going to close this out. And I don't think we're going to need this anymore. So I'm going to go back to our Linux, and I want to look at the last script that we run. Okay, so this is where things get a tad bit different, and I wanted to show you the manual byte encoding here. Sometimes the payload encode does not work the proper way we want it to. I was running into issues with this running this script. So the other thing that we can do is manually byte encode this. And so what I've done is I've generated our payload. This is the same thing as running MSF Venom. Ran through this, got our reverse shell ready, and I've just put B's in front of every single line. This is telling it we're going to byte encode this. Okay, and come down here, look at the shell code. There's a B in front of the A. There's a B in front of the return address. There's a B in front of the NOP, or the no operation. And then we've got the overflow, which is already byte encoded here. We're going to send that over. Same thing. This time we're going to just say payload, put a B in front of the trun command, and then we're going to send over payload without the encoding, and hopefully everything will work just fine. I'm going to go ahead and execute this script here. So I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm just going to set a listener on all fours, and then I'm going to just open Vuln server here on its own. And we shall test this and see if it works. So let's go ahead and run Python 3. This is my 5.py. Execute that. Hopefully we have a shell here, and we do. Same process. Again, not much changes throughout this whole thing. I kind of sped ran through this, and it's more or less because I know you already have the foundations down. Now it's just changing this to the modern times and changing this to show you some of the easier tips and tricks. So when you're looking through these, just go ahead and note Python 3, note the subtle differences of having to encode and having to have a separate variable down here, and then the subtle differences of using parentheses for your print commands as well. Everything else, for the most part, stays the same. There are differences between Python 3 and Python 2 that are more significant than this, but in terms of our scripting and what we have to do, not very significant for this aspect. So again, note the payload encoding. If you're running into any issues with Python 3, putting a B in front of your payload is a good practice, good idea. So, all right, that is it for this video. I will catch you over in the next section. Welcome to the course capstone. This is the 2021 edition of the course capstone, and we'll get into the old capstone, the new capstone, and what the differences are. But the course capstone is meant to challenge you and test your skills and knowledge up to what you've learned so far. Now, not everything is cut and dry. These boxes are not meant to be particularly easy. They're actually meant to be learning experiences. So what that means is you are welcome to go through these machines on your own, give them a try. I realize that we have not talked whatsoever about privilege escalation. We have not talked about a lot of the tools that you're going to see, and this is by design. Hacking is not going to be able to show you, a course on hacking is not going to be able to show you everything, but you're going to get to pick up some ideas and a little bit of Googling and a little bit of frustration and really just getting in there, getting your hands dirty and seeing what you can come up with. So I encourage you to try these on your own in the order that they're listed. However, if you want to just watch and follow along, that's absolutely okay as well. Now, I mentioned privilege escalation, but we'll talk about that here in a second. I want to show you the old course capstone and where the new course capstone is. So I have uploaded the new course capstone. This is not all the machines yet. This is just the ones that I started uploading. All you gotta do is go in here and download these machines. You can run them with VMware or VirtualBox. I've got setup instructions for a couple of the machines. Once you've seen one Windows or one Linux, you can see them all and how to download them and run them. So that's pretty straightforward. The link will be provided in the resources or below the video, depending on what platform you're on. Now, the old capstone. Here's the old capstone. I have not pushed the new update yet, so this is what the old capstone looks like. You could see there were 10 boxes. There were 5 hours of material, or was 5 hours of material. The issue with the old capstone was that we were relying on a platform called HackTheBox. HackTheBox was a paid subscription platform. It cost anywhere from $10 to $15 a month. I'm not sure exactly of the true cost, but I realize not everybody can pay additional funds to go and use this platform to walk through these machines. So what we have done is we've made these machines available via YouTube. So I'm going to put this down below as well, but there is a series originally released called Pen Testing for Noobs. If you look, all 10 of those machines are going to be here as well. So you're welcome to come to the YouTube channel and watch these videos. If you want extra content, extra walkthroughs, and more of the practice and more of the capstone, you're welcome to go sign up for HackTheBox, do all that. But we are removing that dependency from the course. Now, these machines are going to require what is called privilege escalation. We are going to walk through privilege escalation. What I mean by that is, I mean that we are looking at a box. When we land on the machine, we are not root or we are not system on that machine. We are a low-level user, we have low privileges, and we need to escalate our privileges to the highest level that we can. So all of these machines, except for one at the time of this recording, are going to have some sort of privilege escalation involved. Now you're going to get to see some cool tooling, some different techniques and tactics, but it's not going to go into super depth on this. There are courses out there that we have created. We have 2 here. The Windows Privilege Escalation for Beginners and Linux Privilege Escalation for Beginners if you are on Udemy. If you are on the Academy, same concept, Windows and Linux, just depending on the platform you're on and which one you prefer. So if you're interested in going after any sort of certifications, if you're interested in doing any sort of capture the flag or getting better at just escalation in general, highly recommend these courses. If you're looking to stay kind of on that practical path, then these aren't really necessary. It's really based on chasing certifications in the hacking realm, like your OSCP or some of the other certifications that might be out there. They use a lot of privilege escalation to test on. But again, it's not really on the practical side of things. So depending on what your motivations are and reasoning, however, we are going to show them in this course only because they are a good introduction to hacking. It's good to see the other side. It's good to see some of the exploits that are out there, some of the thought processes that are out there. And then once we get into the Active Directory section, it'll really take off from a practical standpoint, and we're really going to start hacking like we are hacking a real network, and it's going to get really fun. It's my favorite section in the whole course. So with that being said, go through the courses again in order as you see them. So however you see them in the list, go ahead and go through them. We're going to add more courses over time. As of right now, the dependency is that you download these and install these for your lab. Again, there will be instructions for those. In later attempts, we are hoping to offload these to an online lab. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do that with Udemy, but with the Academy platform, we should be able to do that. So we're working on getting that. But for now, the Google Drive link that you see attached to the introduction video, this video, will have all the files that you need to download in order to complete this section. So with that being said, go ahead and complete the next box. I'll see you in the next video, and hopefully you rooted it. So before we begin the capstone, I want to show you how to import a machine. And I'm going to show you, starting with Blue, how to import Blue, which is a Windows machine. And then we're going to go ahead and import a Linux machine in a later video. So that way you should know how to do both, though the process is exactly the same. So for Blue, what we're going to do is we're going to come into VMware here, and I'm going to show you VirtualBox as well. We're going to go open virtual machine, and you're just going to select the file that should be available to you here, which is Blue. I've already done that through the magic of editing, so it's already here, and I'm just going to go up here and show you that. We'll get to settings here in a second. For VirtualBox, same exact process. I'm going to go ahead and just go to import. I'm just going to paste the location in here. You can also use this to go find your file. And I'm going to hit next and import. Okay, and it should start importing this file. So here we go, it's importing. It'll take 50 seconds, that's fine. Gives me time to talk about the settings. So you can see here that we are in bridged mode. Okay, we don't want to be in bridge mode. Let's go ahead and edit this. Go to bridged, and we're going to turn this into actually just NAT. Now you can choose how much memory you want to use here. Mine's set to 4 gigs, that's fine. I've got a lot of RAM. If you do not, then go ahead and maybe turn this down to 2 gigs would be absolutely fine. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK here. Now, I'm going to power on this virtual machine, and then we're going to wait for the other one to finish importing, which it has. So here, while we're waiting on this, go ahead and go to Settings, and you're going to want to do the same thing. So network, no bridge, don't do bridge. We're going to do NAT, okay? And then we're going to just enable the network adapter here. So you should have your NAT network set up. Remember that when you did that originally with our settings. If you need to, you can go back to Tools, you can go to Preferences, come in your network, make sure your NAT network is set up. Anyway, come in here, you can go to your settings, and again, make sure that this is on NAT. So, or NAT network, I apologize, NAT network right here, okay? And then I'm gonna hit OK. And then all you need to do is power this on. I'm going to show you with the virtual or the VMware, it's going to be the same process. Now, you can log in as the administrator. You're going to get credentials for every box. That is for the sole purpose that you can access the IP configuration and find the IP of this machine. Okay, just to make it a little bit easier. So there will be an accounts file in here. And here you can see the administrator password is password456 ! So we're just going to do that. And we're going to make sure that this box is online and that we can communicate. So I'm going to quickly go to command, and you can install VMware tools if you want, make this pretty, all that jazz. I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to quickly figure out what's what. You can see 192.168.138.135. I'm going to come over to Kali Linux. I've got a scan that we did for 134 up, but that's okay. I'm just going to ping 192.168.138.135. Okay, and you can see I'm getting a response back. And that's it. You need to make sure that you can communicate with your machine. So if you're running VirtualBox, make sure you spin it up, you log in, you figure out what it is that your IP address is, and go from there. Very, very straightforward. So that is it for this video. Go ahead and attempt to attack Blue. See if you can figure out what the deal is and where you can go and how you can exploit it. And meet me in the next video once you've attempted it to see if you were able to successfully root or system this machine. Thank you. So let's start by taking a look at our Nmap scan. Now, the IP address I got was 192.168.138.135, and not a lot of ports came back. So we got 445 back, and we can scroll through, get a little bit of information, like we see a NetBIOS name on this machine. We see that it's running Windows 7 Ultimate 7601 Service Pack 1. Doesn't appear to be part of a domain, just a work group. Same thing, work group, authentication level user. And really, there's nothing here that is a big indication as to what this could be. So when we have this, as we discussed before, when we're looking at SMB specific vulnerabilities, because that would be my guess here, would be the vulnerability would be SMB related. We need to enumerate SMB in one of two ways, really. The first of that being, well, can we search based on version information that we see here? Can we search on this and see if there's anything vulnerable that could be there? Second of all, if we can't find anything right off the bat for this, maybe then we can go and use something like SMB client, do some enumeration. Maybe there's a null session we can connect to. Maybe there's a file or something, some sort of information with a username or password or something along those lines that gets us into this machine. Otherwise, we're pretty much stuck with version information. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just copy this. And there's a reason that this is the first machine in our run through of the capstone, because this is the easiest, or should be the easiest. So we're going to go ahead and go out to Firefox. And I'm just going to go google.com, come in here, we're going to search for this, and we're going to search for exploit. It already knows me. And we can look through some of these and see if there's anything here that really stands out. First thing for me, we've got a few. We got one here, one here. These just kind of say, they don't necessarily say what they are, so we might need to click into them. MS17010 keeps popping up quite a bit. Let's see if it tells us anything here about architecture. It really doesn't, just shows up as this. So we'll have to do some reading into this. This is a local privilege escalation, doesn't really help us because we're not doing privilege escalation at this point. We're just looking to see if we can even get on this machine. Okay, this shows us, hey, MS17010, this is a exploit for it, written in Python, it looks like. And it says, hey, okay, this could be our target. So we're going to take two different paths here. We're going to look at it first in Metasploit, and then we're going to take it from a manual path, and we're going to see if this is indeed what we're after. So let's go ahead and just go to MSF console. And yours might look a little bit different than mine, depending on what version of Kali you're on, but the process should be the same. I'm on MSF 5. So we're going to go ahead and just search Eternal Blue. And I do know recently they combined all the Eternal Blues into one. So again, yours might be a little bit different than mine, but it should be the same process or concept. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to look up this SMB scanner, right? We want to do an auxiliary. Our auxiliary modules are going to tell us what is there. It's going to be a check. It's not going to be so much an attack. It's more of scanning than anything else. There are some attacks in auxiliary modules, but they're not full-on exploitation. So let's go ahead and just say use one. And we're going to go options in here. And all it's going to do for us is it's going to come in here. We're going to provide it with an rhost. We're going to run it, and it's going to provide a check. Okay, so we can just say set rhost to 192.168.138.135, whatever your IP address is. And then I'm going to say run. And it says host is likely vulnerable to MS17010. Okay, there's a second way to do this. So let's go ahead and just search Eternal Blue again. You can also search MS17-010 or however you want to do this. It should all show up. I'm going to use this number 3 here, the Eternal Blue one. We do know that we're on Windows 7, so the Windows 8 won't work for us. And PSExec we could run, but I'm going to go ahead and just use the one that is most popular and works usually out of the box. So I'm going to go ahead and just say use 3 and type in options. And in here, we have a verify option, which means we should have a check option here. So I'm going to again just say set rhost. I'm going to show you the check feature. 138, 135. Okay, and then I'm going to say check. All right, and so check did exactly what the auxiliary module did for us. It says, hey, it's vulnerable. Okay, or likely vulnerable. So what we need to do is we need to set a payload here. Now, something that you might not know yet at this point is that payloads are, by default, they are set to 32-bit, at least in this example, because there could be a 32-bit exploit in here. Actually, this says 64-bit, so I could be lying to you. Some payloads are set to a 32-bit to start. Because we know that this is a 64-bit machine, or at least should be, given that it's enterprise, we're going to go ahead and set this to 64 bits just to be safe. So this is a practice that I take on if I know the architecture of the machine. I'm going to go in here and set my payload for myself. Now this should be 64-bit, but just to be safe, we're going to type in Windows and hit Tab. Because it only autocompletes to 64-bit, this is perfect. Now, I think where my mind was going is that I want this to be a Meterpreter shell, and I don't know if it defaults to Meterpreter. It might default to a reverse TCP of some sort. So we're going to go ahead and use a Meterpreter shell because we want a nice interface to have. So I'm going to go ahead and set that. Options one time, and I'm going to look at the lhost here, and we could just say set lhost over to, we could just call it ETH0, or you could set your IP address in here. Again, you can IPA or ifconfig, and whatever your IP address is, I'm running on ETH0, so whatever you choose, you could place here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. Now, while this runs, this might not work on the first go. It might not work on the first few goes. This is going to try going through what are called different sets of grooms on here. And it looks like it worked right away. But sometimes this doesn't work right away. And if yours doesn't work right away, that's okay. It might take a few attempts through this first process, and you might have to hit run a few times for this to go. Now, I have chosen using Blue or Eternal Blue for this course because it's so relevant. This is a 4-year-old exploit now. And I see it on so many internal penetration tests, it's not even funny. Like, I wish it would just go away, but it is this easy to run and just get on a machine and gain access. And it's incredibly easy and incredibly prominent in environments. Think about environments where they have systems running that they can't update or do anything with, and you have this, or they just have poor patch management and you have this. It's so easy to get on a machine, and then you come in here and you say hash dump, and you dump out the hash. And now we've got an administrator hash. We can go try to crack that. We can do pass the hash, which we're not there yet. We're going to get there in the Active Directory section. You're going to see what the differences are on this kind of stuff. But you can utilize these hashes to our advantage, and we're going to play around with that a little bit later in the course. So with that being said, this is something that you will likely see if you do become a pen tester. You'll see this in an environment, and it is really this easy to get into a machine like this. So we have used this now to come through here and gain access. We're going to go ahead and go back, and we're going to try doing it again, but we're going to do it through through a manual method. So I'm going to open up a new tab. All right, and we're going to come in here, and I'm going to search Google. Now, if we want to go look for manual methods of exploiting a system, we're likely going to use GitHub, perhaps exploit database. Now, this exploit database one, I'm not going to use only because it gets a little tricky with Eternal Blue. There's a few things that we have to do. I don't believe this one is just one that runs right out of the box. It has a little bit more information here than what's leading on. Now, we might need to reboot this machine, by the way. We'll give it a go and see if it works. It might not work out of the box because we've already exploited the system, but we'll try it anyway. So what we might want to do is something like Eternal Blue, and we might want to say GitHub. Okay, and we can come through here and look through different ones. I like to open a few, and I like to look at them and read the amount of stars that they have, read the descriptions that they have, detailed walkthroughs. You know, all of these have decent stars. This one doesn't have a great walkthrough. This one has a very good kind of detailed walkthrough, has video tutorials, has a decent amount of stars, and I honestly like it. So we're going to go ahead and just get the Auto Blue one from Endgame. So go ahead and find that and get to this. We're going to go ahead and copy this code. And there have been commits since 2021. So that's great. There's recent commits to this, which is awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and go into, I'm going to cd into opt, and I'm going to git clone this. And that's not what I should have been copying. Should have copied this, but we'll try it one more time. And paste here. All right. And then I'm going to cd into AutoBlue, and it gave instructions in here somewhere about how to install this. So let's go to installation, pip install requirements for Python 3, which we should be on at this point. So we're going to do pip install -r requirements, just like that. Let that install. Looks like everything is satisfied or installed, so that's good. From here, we're going to go ahead and do the usage. Now, there was a checker in here, so we can run Python with the checker. So I don't know, it says Python 2, so let's go ahead and run Python 2 with it. It could be Python 3 too, so we might run into an issue. Checker.py 192.168.138.135. Target is not patched. Testing name pipes. Okay, so this is something that I actually use on an assessment, regardless if it's this or the Metasploit version. I will take a screenshot of this. There are reasons sometimes where we won't run the exploit. If the environment has critical machines running, for example, like in a hospital, I might not run this exploit because this can take down a machine. And if I don't know what machine I'm taking down, who knows in a hospital, right? You don't want to make that mistake. So it's always better to play it on the safe side when we're running these exploits. If you don't know, you can always ask your client, say, hey, I've got this machine, here's the IP address, I want to run this exploit, is that okay? And get permission first. Now, there's a lot of ways, which you'll see when we get into the Active Directory exploitation part of the course, that we can compromise a domain and we can run all kinds of exploitation, own the whole domain controller, and not worry about tipping over the server by any means. This can tip over a server, so you want to be safe with these kinds of things. So with that said, I'm going to show you how to run this manually, but it's going to tip your box over. I'm going to give the secret away. It's going to tip your box over, and this is going to be the lesson learned from running this exploit. I'm going to show you the proper way to do it manually. With the version we have, it's not super easy to get a shell from the manual method. We could go around and play around and find one that works, but I'm going to show you this from here's how you would run it manually, but also here's the dangers of running this in an environment. And this is a perfect box to show you why we don't go run remote code execution on machines in an environment, because this can take down a machine. So let's go ahead and run through the process. I'm going to show you the process, and then we're going to knock this machine over. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to cd to the shellcode directory, and we're going to run shell prep. And I'll say this now and watch the exploit will work fine. So, oops, we're going to go ahead and just hit yes here. And then we're going to enter in our reverse connection, 192.168.138.128 is mine. I'm going to say 9999 for this. We can do 2222 for x86. We're not going to use it. Now we have the opportunity to use a Meterpreter shell or generate a regular command shell. If we do the Meterpreter shell, we can go into Meterpreter and we can actually run it in the sense that we use a multi-handler and pull down. It's basically a listener. It is a listener, and it's going to pull down a Meterpreter shell for it. So it's just a shell code that we're generating. We already used a Meterpreter shell to get the first shell on this. So now we're going to go back and we're going to go ahead and try to do this with a regular command shell. So you can press 0 if you want to try the Meterpreter shell method. You can also press 1 to generate the regular command shell method. We're going to go ahead and just do the regular command shell. We're going to generate a staged payload. Staged or stageless here should crash this machine. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to run this listener prep once this is all done. So it's doing this for us. We're going to go ahead and cd back in a second once this is done. All right, now I'm going to cd back and we're going to do listener prep. And this is going to run a listener in Metasploit for us, which is nice. We could just as easily run this with Netcat. We can just say nc nvlp like we have before, nc-nvlp like this, and whatever port we're listening on, all 9s before. So we're going to go ahead and just let this run its course as intended. And we're going to do 9999. We did 2222 here. And we're going to go ahead and say regular command shell, all the same things we did before, staged payload. And it's going to start this up for us, hopefully start up some listeners, and you should see a lot of work just go in. Okay, it's got all those listening. It's waiting for any sort of connection to come through. So the next thing we're going to do is, and it is using the multi